Hi there, this is a response to DanaGarrett's video, which is a response to my video on gateway concepts and atheism. Thanks for that response, Dana, it's great. Yeah, I mean the thing it introduced, which I hadn't really thought about, which is really interesting, which is about... I'll do some background before I can get into what I'm thinking about here, really. I wasn't actually going to make any more videos about gateway concepts, because it is a bit limited as an idea. There's only a certain number of things you can do with it. And also, I think to fully exploit it to the extent you can, you have to have some background knowledge in it, really. Because I'm kind of borrowing gateway concepts from an older idea called threshold concepts, which is, I guess, found in certain branches of education, not the branch that I'm involved in, but it is a term that educationalists use. And generally, the idea of threshold concepts, or as I'm putting it, gateway concepts, come out of epistemology, really, of understanding of what knowledge is, or how we think about knowledge. And there's a strand within Western philosophical thought to do with knowledge, which understands knowledge as space. It's a kind of set of extended metaphors and figurative speech, which allows us to conceive of knowledge as a kind of space. And gateway concepts is part of that overall framework, or threshold concepts. It's part of that overall framework. So we imagine gaining new knowledge as moving into a new piece of space, moving onto a new territory. We might be part of some avant-garde process, or some advance, or some exploration, or some... it's that whole kind of metaphor being played out, spatial metaphor, and gateway is part of that metaphor. So that's just the backdrop to what I'm saying, really. But... So the gateway concept, or the threshold concept, is the exploitation and development of a spatial metaphor for knowledge, and one which focuses particularly on moments of transition between a known and the unknown. So you know a certain amount of stuff, and then there's this kind of land or this space over there somewhere that you don't have access to, but to get to it you have to go through this gateway. And particular ideas can function as gateways to allow you to make that transition into this new knowledge. That's the overall idea. What you spun out there, Dana, which I think is really interesting, is the possibility that gateways don't necessarily lead out, but also lead in, but also lead out. And I have to say, I haven't come across that anywhere in the literature on threshold concepts either. Let alone this kind of gateway concept that I'm kicking around. It's very interesting. I mean, to fully exploit it, I have to kind of stay rigorously within the metaphor, because that's the only way it works. So what I'm imagining here is, or how I'm interpreting what you're saying, is that certain kinds of let's call them indoctrination processes, certain kinds of child rearing processes, certain kinds of education processes, certain kinds of just equipping processes, learning processes that you gather around you as you grow up in a certain culture, can perhaps constrain you in certain ways. Well, they're bound to constrain you in certain ways. But what you seem to be saying is that there may be certain concepts, gateway concepts or threshold concepts, which don't lead into a kind of additional piece of knowledge, but they lead you to recognise that you are already in a constrained area of knowledge and out into somewhere else. So the example you give is to do with atheism. I don't have this experience, but if you have been raised in a very religious community, I suppose I'm thinking of Angie the anti-theist here, who talks really eloquently about it. If you have been raised in a very particular religious community, it might be that you come across something which leads you out of the constraints of that knowledge into somewhere else. And there's a series of question marks around what that something else is. It might be a realization that the Bible is a cobbled together set of stories rather than the divine word of God, or it might be the realization of evil in the world, or it might be exposure to the kind of venal behavior of certain priests and religious leaders. It might be all these kind of things which act as gateway experiences or gateway concepts, which don't lead you into a piece of knowledge, but lead you out of the constraints of the knowledge you are raised within. I can absolutely see that. I think that's a really valuable addition. I mean, my only question would be where it leads you out into. What space, to stay within the metaphor, what space are you exiting into? And that's great. I mean, is it the space of unknowing, which I really like the idea of? Is it, is there, I'm not even sure you could call it knowledge, but is it this kind of vacuum of, or this kind of pregnant space of possibility, which is, highly undefined, but it's just a sense of space opening up? Or is there a particular alternative knowledge space that you move into? So you move, for example, from atheism into methodological naturalism, or you move from from theism into methodological naturalism, or from theism into a different kind of theism, from one religion to another. What's the space you move into? That's something that I'm finding really interesting to exercise, based on what you were talking about there, Dana. I think, given the choice, I like the first one best. I like the idea of releasing from the constraints of what you understood to be a space of knowledge, releasing through some kind of gateway experience or gateway concept out into a space of unknowing. Yeah, thanks very much for that. It's great stuff.